Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said last week, I am interested in how the political Sunday in Slovakia will look like. I want to continue organizing press conferences in which I want to respond to the topics that were relevant in the previous week. In spite of this, I want to make a challenge at the beginning of my press conference that I am ready to sign an agreement with all the presidents of the political parties that would know that we will free the citizens of the Slovak Republic from political press conferences and discussions that they regularly have on Sundays. Let me tell you that Sunday should really be a day of peace. If we agreed on a political discussion, it could easily take place during the week. Why wouldn't the so-called 5-minute 12 be 5-minute 8? It could be Monday evening on STV2. Markiza, Jojka, everyone else, TV3, you can have a TV discussion in the evening. But the state of the society in which it is, in my opinion, does not allow us to continue the aggressiveness that we feel on Sundays. This is my challenge. I repeat, I am ready to sign an agreement with the other political parties that we would shift all these political relations to working days. As long as the other representatives and political parties do not agree, I will not be able to organize a press conference every morning before the political discussions. I have my own reasons for that, because whether I sit down or not in discussions, my name is always mentioned and criticized 100 times. Moreover, I believe that the quality of the preparation of the moderators, the content of these discussions, even from a distance, does not correspond to what people deserve in Slovakia's background political discussions. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I will complete one more short symbolic act, because it is 106 years since the death of Milan Rastislav Stefanik. I will go to Ivanka and honor the memory of this great man. I will not make any appeals to Milan Rastislav. You know that whenever I have the opportunity, and it has been many years, I go to Bradlow or Ivanka. I just want to remind you that let us all respect our work and the way it was done to our own country and to our own people. I believe that today will also be in the spirit of the memory of Milan Rastislav Stefanik, who certainly deserves it. Last Sunday, ladies and gentlemen, we held a press conference on the topic of the state of public finances. And let me say a few words about it today, because we have more news. If you remember well, I announced on Sunday that on April 30th, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Kamenicki, will publish new information. But most importantly, there were further assessments of the state of Slovak public finances. A prominent rating agency, Standard & Poor, assessed that our public finances are in good condition. They left us a positive rating, and a plus, because of the external factors which we will now discuss with Mr. European Ambassador. There are some concerns about what will happen. But these are external factors. Slovakia is a very export-oriented country. It is tied to what will happen in Germany. In Germany, there is a zero economic growth, which can have a great impact on companies that affect Slovakia, and which, for example, produce production, which is important for Germany. There is also a huge trade war going on when it comes to the European Union and the United States and China. Europe is concerned that once the markets for the United States and Chinese products are closed, that these Chinese products can overwhelm the European markets and further damage the European economy. So these external factors are extremely negative and extremely dangerous. What is important, however, is that the international financial markets believe in us, and I am pleasantly surprised. Even the Budget Council has said that our public finances have been sustainable for a long time, that this quality is very good, it is fair, it is the best since 2018. This assessment by the Budget Council, which is far, far away from what this government of the Slovak Republic is doing well, only confirms that we are on the right track. The path is difficult. I will talk about this in more detail in a political moment. But I have to remind you, and this is a historical fact, that we exceeded the worst public finances in the entire European Union in 2023. I have to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that in 2020 to 2023, we increased our debt by 24 billion euros. 24 billion euros. That is a simple amount. I can only imagine a state budget. As far as further development is concerned, there is good news that in 2024, our deficit was at 5.27%, which is significantly less than originally planned. We expected the deficit to be at 5.9% to 6%. But we simply took it, and in 2024, this deficit was only at 5.27%. We want to continue in 2025 with this deficit being at 4.9% BOR. So we continue to fall with the deficit. And the good news is that we are able to maintain the debt level, which is still within the rules of the European zone. Because the rules apply to us as well as to the EU member state. Ladies and gentlemen, in these circumstances, I have to emphasize that the path we have chosen is the right one. It is painful, but we have clearly stated that we will not ruin public finances as Matović, Heger, or ODOR did. We will not do that. And I support the political party that is ready to make responsible decisions and solutions. The biggest problem, ladies and gentlemen, is the consolidation of public finances and the state of our economy. And the question is how the trade war between the EU and the US will develop. I have stated that this is one of the most important external influences that we will have to react to, but as a whole, individual member states cannot react to. Please, let us not compare the EU and the US from the point of view of the leadership of these states. Because the EU functions in such a way that 27 member states have to come to an agreement. In the case of the US president decides as the pinnacle of a certain pyramid of government and state power. For example, I have learned that when it comes to the dispute regarding the production of cars, when the US has ordered 25% of the cars, the US administration wants to deal with it in such a way that when it comes to importing some parts from Europe to the US, and there is 25% of the cars, the US government is ready to compensate the car manufacturers in the US, because their production will also be delayed if they manufacture cars in the US, but they need parts from Europe for which the US President Trump ordered 25% of the cars, then 25% of the cars will come to the US more expensively. Therefore, he offers a solution in the form of compensation, but this is a solution that cannot be accepted within the EU at the level of individual member states. It has to be a joint decision. Tomorrow, I am holding an official meeting with representatives of the automotive industry here in Bratislava, as well as big companies that are strongly affected by this policy. We want to discuss what pressure we will put on the EU, what priorities the EU. I think that at this time it should not be arms. 800 billion euros should be spent on arms within the EU. which is a topic where we feel very uncomfortable, and we are doing everything so that we do not spend money on other priorities in the Slovak Republic, so that someone here rushes to arms at any cost. Today I have with me the EU ambassador to Slovakia, Slovak Social Democracy, Mr. Eric Kaliňák, who is leaving for the EU Parliament tomorrow, I think. I wanted to ask him because the way I communicate with Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič, where we exchange information, I assume that the EU Parliament will create pressure towards the Commission so that the Commission reacts. So before I give Eric the floor, a short summary of what I said. We had to do the consolidation, and we will continue to do it because we received devalued public finances. No one can deny that. But we are doing it in a way that we are not jumping, as Mr. Oder proposed, who said that we should cut 7 billion, which would mean the dissolution of the social state. We are doing it step by step. The numbers are very clear. Deficit in 2024, 5.27%, lower by 0.7% than originally planned. Deficit in 2025 planned 4.9%. We are slowly, gradually decreasing because any idea of a balanced state budget is fiction. It is nonsense. I believe that no one in the heads of the opposition would even think of such a thing, because it is the opposition that is fully responsible for the state of our public finances. But we are on the right track. This is confirmed by the rating agencies, and it is also confirmed by the analysis or the position of the Budget Council, which has positively evaluated the long-term sustainability of the public finances of the Slovak Republic. I believe that other countries of the European Union, which are dependent on the production of automobiles, will take up this topic constructively. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the biggest problem of Slovakia. The biggest problem of Slovakia, which we currently have and which the government has to deal with, is how to react to the huge negative impacts coming from abroad. Please realize when you walk around Slovakia how many factories produce various products for the automotive industry. This is simply the population of Slovakia, small, medium, or large companies, which employ 10,000 people who are dependent on the production of cars in the largest automobiles in Slovakia, or who supply these products to other countries. We have a huge problem with the economy in Germany, which is going to zero. The economy is growing. This must interest us, and yet each of us expects that we will also deal with the sustainability of public finances so that next year and the next year, I believe that this government will last until 2027. Public finances will be in such a state in which another government will be able to build its own program. But not in the state that we were given when we all had to realize that the end of the world is the worst public finances in the European Union. Before we move on to the next two topics, I will be brief. I would like to address the topic of political consolidation. I will repeat very clearly that I understand the coalition partners that they are nervous. The nervousness stems from the fact that their embassy clubs have fallen apart. They were unable to bring these ambassadors back to their offices. In order for the government to continue to function, it was necessary to take measures that they do not like. Of course, they do not like these measures. If you get into a conflict with your own ambassadors and then all of a sudden these ambassadors who were either expelled from the embassy clubs or left appear in the government of the Slovak Republic as ministers, it is difficult to get over it. So I understand the political nervousness of our two coalition partners. In the direction of Slovak social democracy, the embassy club did not fall apart. And I want the direction of Slovak social democracy to be a guarantee of the functioning of this government coalition. I will be very precise now. If we are to make agreements on further consolidation, which we have to make, if this government coalition, if we do not want to return public finances, I will continue to maintain these agreements. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not possible, and this cannot be repeated. This is not how a government coalition or any government can function. A political body, a coalition council, all of them will raise their hand without hesitation. All of the ambassadors of the government coalition will vote without hesitation for an agreement. And then their coalition partners will read 3 articles in the newspaper SME, in Aktualita, or in the newspaper EN, and they will get scared. I understand the confusion. I repeat, I have been in politics for a long time, and I see that every political party has its own inner life. Every political party is trying to survive. Imagine if I were to react the way the presidents of the coalition parties imagine what it would look like. I would avoid any conflict of this kind. And I will not do it. And I will not do it. What would it look like if someone tells us that the question of vaccines or the question of foreign organizations is a representative topic? Thousands of dead people, the rest of the dead people, vaccines that contain a high amount of DNA, which is confirmed today by further analysis. I believe that Mr. Kotlar will hold a press conference. This is a representative topic for God. Foreign organizations that have politically destroyed this state are a representative topic. No, please. The direction of Slovak social democracy stands and will stand for this governing coalition. But it cannot be repeated that when consolidating or anything else, we will look at it in the Coalition Council, we will approve it in the National Council, and then someone will look at the preferences and 3 articles in the newspapers and get scared. Those who are afraid, don't go to the forest. Especially not to the political forest. Therefore, with great respect to my coalition partners, I will never go into the rhetoric that I listen to. I will not allow myself to this exchange of opinions. We will continue to monitor the pace of this governing coalition. We will respect the internal life of our coalition partners. But I would like to point out that someone, at the expense of the direction of Slovak social democracy, has solved their internal problems that they have on their own, and which are connected to the fact that they may not get what they should or want. Therefore, I look forward to working with my coalition partners. I will listen carefully to the proposals they propose. When the president of the Slovak National Party talks about the designation of food products, you know what I am talking about. Let's talk about it, even though it is not a part of the coalition agreement. We are ready to talk about everything. But the worst political death is fear and intimidation. That is the worst political death. We are a half of the government, and we are interested in the implementation of this coalition by 2027. I will be patient, but when it comes to the agreements on the Coalition Council, I will ask for their support. Because then I ask myself what the Coalition Council is when you come to an agreement, sign it, go to the Parliament, implement it, and then after a few weeks you hear that they were not even there. The government coalition must take responsibility. We cannot say that this is a directional thing. What do we have to do with it? When I start talking that this is a SNS thing and this is a voting thing, we are done. The coalition partner must ask the question we have in our heads. To hold on until 2027, yes. But at the same time, to be politically successful. That is why I am looking forward to it. The meeting of the National Council begins on May 27th, I think. I do not see a reason for us to organize the Coalition Council unnecessarily. The Coalition Council must be called to the essential things. Many things can be solved by the presidency and the business clubs, but I assume that in connection with the consolidation that we have to implement by 2026, we will need at least 2 to 3 coalition councils. I agree with them. I thought it was important to say this because in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I do not have any special reactions to our address. We used to be some flattering gentlemen. I endure a lot. But for me, the value of this government coalition is 100 times higher than the flattering to react immediately to what some of the coalition partners say at our address. Allow me now to ask you a few questions. We want to end so that you all can watch the glorious political discussions that start at 10 and end at 2 p.m. on Sunday. From the internal factors, I do not perceive anything that I, as the president of the government, should solve. The biggest problem I mentioned is the public finances, the production of cars. This is what this country is worth. This country is not worth what the opposition is saying. This is the topic. Nothing else should bother us at this moment. How to save the Slovak economy. How to react to the trade war between the European Union and the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to react to the outside factors. First, I have to defend myself against the statements of the Ukrainian President Zelensky, who seems to be threatening that anything can happen during the celebrations of the victory over fascism on May 9th in the Russian Federation. This is unacceptable. This is ridiculous to me. The way Mr. Zelensky, I am a small player. He is not threatening me. He is threatening the Chinese president. He is threatening the Brazilian president. He is threatening the president and the head of state and the prime minister of the countries where hundreds of millions of people live. He says, don't go there or we, Ukraine, will do something to you. This is not done. Mr. Zelensky, I reject such threats for the sake of security. I fully respect the fact that the security of the participants is an internal matter of the Russian Federation. But just as Mr. Zelensky claims that his statements will prevent foreign delegations from coming there, this is a huge mistake. I had to defend myself against such statements. I am very sorry that Mr. Zelensky and others are mixing the past with the present. For God's sake, there were also Ukrainian soldiers who died in 1941, 1945, and died en masse in the Second World War. On the contrary, now it was necessary to accept the proposal of the 80th anniversary celebration, and at least to be quiet when the Czech Republic does not want to end the Second World War. It is a great disrespect if a country that had the greatest share in the victory over fascism and had the greatest sacrifice, as we can imagine, refuses to celebrate and we throw a drone there. These are unacceptable things for me. This does not belong to modern politics. I understand that we have also joined the war. This is a violation of international law. But I will not mix the present with what happened in 1941-1945. Then I would have to look at the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. This would prevent me from doing the same in international politics. As far as my participation is concerned, I know that there are huge waves around it. I would also recommend to Mrs. Callas that she should focus on whether or not I will go to the celebration of the 80th anniversary. I will go to the celebration of the 80th anniversary. I will go there. I will also tell you some happy stories about how some EU member states do not want to allow a government aircraft to fly over. These are embarrassing things. It is embarrassing if you want to fly over the EU territory and they say, no, you cannot fly over us. Can you imagine what I am talking about and where we got from the international relations? I would like to say two words about the internal affairs of Ukraine. The first is the agreement on the use of non-native wealth, which was officially signed only in one version. But it seems that there are three agreements that talk about the implementation of these basic agreements and the conditions. The agreement between the United States and Ukraine is a matter of Ukrainian knowledge how the agreement will be signed or not. It is their non-native wealth. We have nothing to do with it. I just want to remind you that similar agreements were already signed with the devil. I am not talking about the devil, but the devil. Ladies and gentlemen, why did Mikuláš Dzurinda and his government agree on the bombing of Belgrade? They agreed because they were awarded the membership of the North System Atlantic Alliance. Mikuláš Dzurinda said it openly, of course. Yes, we allowed the bombing of Slovakia, which then launched bombs on Belgrade and killed civilians because we expected that we would be taken to the North Atlantic Alliance. That is a noble goal. But really, I have to ask about the killing of civilians. Do you remember the agreement signed by the negotiators when we had to close 2 healthy blocks of the nuclear power plant? Do you remember the massive privatization of everything valuable we had in Slovakia? If today Slovakia strategically controlled the power plant, the gas plant, and everything else, we would live differently. So this agreement signed between the United States and Ukraine is exactly the same agreement that someone is making to achieve a goal. And let Mr. Zelensky get angry now. I know why he signed it. Mr. Zelensky bought a war. Mr. Zelensky really cares about the continuation of the war. And do you think that this agreement, if he signed it, would suppress the United States in the peaceful efforts that U.S. President Trump clearly announced on the first day of his inauguration? It is their decision, but I think this agreement, ladies and gentlemen, this agreement, you know that most of my words come from it, means that the war continues. And it can last for a very, very long time. And it can also lead to escalation of tensions. And that's why I'm sorry that such a small offer, as an example, is from May 8th to May 11th at the celebration which was proposed by the Russian administration was not respected. Let me completely conclude, ladies and gentlemen, so that we can react to something which is not an important form, that people said something or didn't say something, but where is our society getting to? Let's start. Please watch these 3 short videos which are 30 seconds long, and then I will say some political statement. I would like to remind you that this is a war in which people die. This is a war that I, unlike your journalist, unlike many opposition politicians, reject from the first day. I reject it from the first day. From the first day, I demand that peace talks begin. Already in April of 2022, when this war began, there were peace agreements on the table, which, however, Ukraine did not sign under the pressure of the Western allies because they thought that this war would serve to weaken the Russian Federation. I will not go into a dispute with you now, but I would like to ask you if you wrote about Odessa on May 2nd, 2014, when 42 people were burned in the House of Representatives without Russian sympathizers. You know, this is a question if you are ready to talk about the information and quality of your preparation. In 2014, you are looking for the beginning of the war that we have now. It is not February. Every single sacrifice, whether it is the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. I do not consider it necessary to repeat it all the time because I am against this war. I am against it. But let's go back to the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Dear editor, for God's sake, realize, because there is little written about it, we all only see the movie Save the Soldier of Rajin, or we see Dunkirk. But there are very few good movies about what was going on the Eastern Front. Please read some professional things about what was going on the Dukla. It is important to know what was going on in 1941-1945. And this is my mental equipment. I simply consider it important, as we will do on the 8th here in Slovakia, because Piastani is the official celebration of the end of the Second World War, to express respect to the nation and to the country that played a decisive role in the defeat of fascism. I don't know if you need a high school to understand this, but I still reject this war. The war was the subject of my almost 2-hour conversation with President Putin during my visit in December. And it is still the subject of our conversation. We are still encouraging and talking when we were in the United States. If you take my speech at the SIPAC conference, I will always repeat it around that this war must end as soon as possible. So, again, the biggest problem is that I have to go and remember the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, and where there will be other world politicians if you don't include the Chinese president, Brazilians, and other important representatives of this world, then it is your opinion. I have a different opinion. I think that we are now having an unnecessary discussion. I am going to remember and pay respect to the nation that played a decisive role in Hitler's defeat in 1941-1945, the nation that suffered the most. I repeat, the soldier from the 1st Czechoslovak Army who said, "I walked hundreds of kilometers through the Russian museum, and I saw Russian children stuffed on iron bars and thrown into the cold." So, I have respect for what was done, who paid for it, and I reject the war that is now taking place. None of your words, Mr. Editor.
Mr. Fico, you did not answer my question about what you will do when Putin begins to connect the celebrations of the 80th anniversary with the war, and you will stand close to it. I don't want to end this discussion. This is my last question, and you can try to answer the first one as well. I know it is a sensitive question, but due to the fact that you have interrupted your program several times, and I am very sensitive in this area, I realize that this is not a question I would ask you every day, because it does not apply. But in this case, I consider it a public interest, how you are mentally and physically, because from what we see, it seems that you are not fully able to perform your function fully, because you have to cancel your program and you did not explain it.
So we have another line of attack on the chairman of the government that he is not able to perform his function. Mr. Editor, you know well that you are protecting your privacy, and I know well what I can and can't do. Tomorrow morning I will invite you to Hradec. Will you come with me? Please come to Hradec in the morning so that you can understand what I am able to do and what I am not. You will come for the meeting with the cars and you will see what is possible and what is not. Mr. Editor, you jumped from joy on May 15, 2002. I know that you jumped. I know what was going on in the editorial office. Mr. Editor, I know about the fees that you introduced in your editorial office. Let me finish. You asked a question and I will answer. I know about the fees between journalists, and in your editorial office you argued whether Fico will survive or not. So once again, look at everything that is going on in your editorial office, and if it is bad, say that it is nonsense. Mr. Editor, once again, on May 15, 2024, I was seriously injured. You do not believe that, do you? I was seriously injured, and I have said 100 times, and I will repeat it 1,000 times, that there are certain things that are connected to the date and that prevent me from completing a 4-hour drive in a car. I will not answer you more. That is all. Try to let yourself be shot 5 times from a 9mm weapon, and then ask yourself after a year, or I ask you after a year, how are you doing? Are you doing well after a year? I am absolutely fine. Mr. Editor, I beg you. You started with the nonsense that it is good that I am not participating in a military exercise against Ukraine. We are helping Ukraine, and we will continue to do so. We are for the end of the war as soon as possible. And as for my health, you have nothing to do with it. I will not share my health with you. I am physically able to perform an extremely demanding job, and I will continue to do so. I have been in politics since 1991, and it is already 34 years. Something can happen that you cannot function 100% every day. I know that you would get rid of me, but you will have to wait for that. You will have to wait for that. I know that you will lose what you put on my desk in your editorial office, but Mr. Editor, do you think that you do not have people in your editorial office who do not praise you? What was going on in the editorial offices? What was going on in the central offices of the regional political parties? Do you read what you write? So I am absolutely nothing. A classic health problem that was connected with an assassination that is happening there, and that limits my performance. And that is the whole point. Now I have to explain and write what happened to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prime Minister, this week the party has already announced certain changes in the transaction tax. Is there a possibility to fix this tax?
I have already pointed out at the other press conference that we have certain technical problems when it comes to the transaction tax. For example, from some deposits that go through the banks, this tax is being collected, although it should not be collected. The Ministry of Finance communicates about this very intensively. When it comes to the taxpayers, correct me if I am wrong, but I have information that many taxpayers have a program of support for these taxpayers so that this transaction tax is not directly imposed on these people. It is 700 million. Mr. Editor, I will return to the political position that I have already mentioned in connection with the consolidation. You cannot threaten yourself as a 3-year-old in politics. It simply is not possible. And you cannot have the feeling that Jesus Christ, everyone is writing about the transaction tax, so let's quickly change the transaction tax. It cannot work like that. It would mean that we would adopt a law of some political party that is a part of the ruling coalition. And I will read 3 critical articles in the newspaper Smek. It is always the same. Actuality, Smechko, Enko, it is always the same. Marquisa, of course. And now I will quickly get scared and start attacking this law. The most important thing about the transaction tax is that it is supposed to bring 700 million to the state budget, so that we can state, Mr. Editor, which is stated by Standard & Poor's, that we can do it. And as the Budget Council itself says that the sustainability of public finances is as it is. That is the most important thing. So, if someone forgets, let me, Matusz Szutaj, I respect him. Of course, he is the chairman of another political party. But if he forgets how he voted for the Budget Council, or if he forgets that his MPs all voted for the transaction tax, then why is this issue being raised under the pressure of some newspaper articles? Under the pressure that maybe no one can afford it now? Why all of a sudden? It is as if we are going to claim that we have adopted something that is totally nonsense. But we knew what we were doing. Do you think I like the transaction tax? Of course I don't like it. Do you think I am glad that we had to raise the VAT even though we reduced it? I don't like it. And what am I supposed to do when the worst public finances in the EU are handed over to us, and I want those finances to exist and function as they are? So let them come and say what they want. I mainly want to ask where they want to take the money. If someone wants to take the 700 million from the transaction tax, which I hate, the entire transaction tax, but it means the 700 million in the state budget, if someone wants to take 200 or 300 million, fine, tell us where, who. If Matusz Szutaj comes and says, I want to cut the transaction tax and offer 300 million from the resort controlled by HLAS, let him like it. I'm ready to talk to him about it. No problem. If the former ministers who form the political party HLAS, I have absolutely no problem with it. You can't jump like a flea in a cocoon. You have to have a certain political integrity. Imagine how it would look if I reacted like this and reacted to Andrzej Adanka, reacted to Matusz Szutaj, reacted to Rashiho. I understand that it's a good move. Fico will withstand a lot. We keep saying that lightning strikes a tall tree. Fine. But if I'm ready to talk about the transaction tax, I'll be happy about it. But at the moment, I don't see where we can find 200 or 300 million. If we find it together, I'm just asking my coalition partners not to take political capital from what they directly shared, what they voted for, that's all. Nothing else. If we could do something as a party, we could do something. If they have different ideas, look, this is my sovereign decision to go celebrate in Moscow. I think it's the right decision. Or we'll be in Piastana on the 8th. If someone has a different political opinion about whether to go or not to celebrate the 80th anniversary, let them say it. It's not written in the government statement, but where we agreed, signed things, I don't see any room for speculation. Only for further agreements.